And this is Obioma for the record, Obioma officer for the record. Thank you excuse me, let's start that again. The interpreter got herself a little messed up. I have heard from different people within the community and from different members of this committee today where you've talked about cultural competency. Over and over again, we have heard that we don't have enough people that have the knowledge or experience to know what's happening within the life of each of the individuals we're serving to provide them that service. So as a person with a hearing loss providing a service, it makes sense what you're saying. We need to have engagement. We need to have cultural competency. We need to understand who we're serving, but most of our service providers do not have that background. And so we hear that as often as a commission, that those who are serving the deaf community are not themselves culturally competent. They're not getting hired members of the deaf community are not getting hired to fill the positions to serve the deaf community. So preference is usually given to those who sign and speak, so they're hearing. They can speak on their own, and they will be hired before a deaf person who would have the cultural competence, the knowledge, and the linguistic ability. So our students in our community would benefit if that were the case, but when it's not, they're not being exposed to the language and the culture that they need in order to get the services in an appropriate way. So that being said, again, finding the experts, not only is that a challenge, finding the expert, right? But convincing those in the positions of authority to then hire those experts. This is Obioma officer for the record. Is there any more questions?
Yes, just a minute. Anyone up north have questions? I don't see any hands raised. So just a couple. In 2017, we sponsored a bill when I was chair of Health and Human Services to establish the Commission on the Deaf, because prior to that it was a committee. And so I am so glad to see that it is still alive and functioning well. We also had a bill, Senate Bill 203, that I sponsored that would have created a school for deaf children, hard of hearing, blind, and vision impaired. It got enrolled in Chapter 601, and I'm just trying to figure out what happened to it, because I know that part of the issue was just what Senator Don Darrell Loop said. Parents in the north didn't want their kids to come south, and the parents south didn't want their kids to go north. And we didn't have the funding to create two schools. I had a recommendation that we would start with one and move to two. So the issue throughout that session, 2019, the issue throughout that session was, how do we pay for it? We also had a bill that I think it was 2017, to provide hearing aids for children, insurance companies to provide hearing aids for children up to grade 6, I think it was, when they would have an opportunity to learn spoken language and also ASL. And couldn't get that across the finish line either. So what you're saying here is deja vu for me. But I would say I wouldn't give up, because I know one of the things that we always grapple with, and that is funding. And unfortunately, we only meet every other year. That's draconian. Legislature ought to meet every year. And so what happens is when something passes or it's in limbo or doesn't pass, whatever, you have to wait 18 months to bring it back. And, memory, gets short, and there are other bills that you try to carry. So that's the first thing I ought to say. And as soon as Ms. Cooper finds it, I'll read it. But in the meantime, and this is also for Ms. Jacomore. I think I got it right. If you can come to the table, yeah. One of the things that I brought up in the special session of 2020, when we were talking about mail-in ballots, and there were some of my colleagues who were adamantly against it. But I saw that and see that still as a way for people who are blind or visually impaired or deaf or hard of hearing. I see that as a way for you all to participate in the process. So can someone tell me how that happens now? Are you able, is that process something that goes throughout, the ability to vote? And I'm not just talking about presidential, I'm just the ability to vote. It's a basic right of citizens, unless there's something that's happened and that right has been taken away. So, anybody tell me, how do you do that? Do you do that? Can you do that? If so, how?
This is Obioma, officer for the record. We just met with the voting polls with another organization, the DD Council, in order to talk about that specific issue. Voting polls are not accessible for the deaf and hard of hearing, and the reason being is because of all of the English verbiage that is used. So we are trying to collaborate in order to create a way for voting polls to be accessible. I understand that the blind community has similar concerns, and then also with the needs for developing, if those who have developmental delays need to have somebody with them in order to provide support, but having that concept of making voting accessible, so having a person in the box with you, maybe interpreting, or having someone to help you is illegal. So you cannot do that. So we're not able to provide that type of a service, but we are working to figure out how to give people access when it comes to the voting polls so that everyone has the right to vote. People in the deaf and hard of hearing community do vote. Yes, absolutely. However, with barriers, it can be difficult. And this is Shelley Freed for the record. You will have more voters come from the deaf and hard of hearing community if we have videos that signed things in American Sign Language. Just having the video, maybe like a P&P, like a picture-in-picture, you have an interpreter in a square or a bubble maybe, and you just click yes, no, and have that interpreter signing. And so a deaf person can go right into the booth, have an interpreter not necessarily present with them, but rather providing that access on a screen. And this is Obioma, officer for the record. And that's exactly what we talked about with the DD Council. Again, how do we navigate the current legalities of confidentiality, not having someone influence someone else when it comes to their vote? So we have been talking about partnering with different organizations, companies that would provide automatic on-demand interpreters that would be able to sign for them, and they could see the wording or the phrasing, whatever verbiage was provided. The interpreter would sign the exact verbiage, and then they would have the options to click on. That was all discussed with that meeting with the DD Council, but there wasn't a conclusion at that time.
And Becky J. Kamara for the record. For the blind community, there are, every voting site does have to have one accessible, non-visually accessible. However, barrier is they are not always trained on how to utilize that one, the workers at the poll station. And then often they're recommending having somebody come in. And of course, as a blind individual, depending on how much site is remaining, that person could put whatever they would want in there. And again, it's not legal. So that's not necessarily the best solution. They did incorporate an online voting option, which is more accessible because you can use your own personal screen reader to do that. However, there's been a lot of opposition towards that because they're worried about voter fraud. But for the blind community, that's a big advancement to be able to do it, since the polls are not always trained on how to use accessible machines.
Which is why I heard from someone in the deaf community about the vote by mail, because it comes to your home, it's private, and, you know, as a voter, as an adult, most people who are hearing or deaf or hearing impaired or blind or visually impaired, most they already know how to read the language, if you will, and they can do that in the privacy of their home. And if they have a question, they could ask that question of someone that they know won't lead them wrong, won't just tell them anything, if you will. But that, and then the sample ballots go out first. And so when the sample ballots come to your home, you have an opportunity to look them over and decide on the sample ballots how you will vote and who you will vote for. And that ballot can also be transferred, I shouldn't say transferred, but the information there. Once you see that, you know, vote for president, vote for Senate, Congress, state, you know, everybody down the line. Once you do that, then when you go into the voting booth, you know what you want to do. And so the whole idea, at least for me, why I supported it strongly, is that it gives people who don't have access to someone who can interpret for them, or, you know, someone who should be talking about who should help those who are sight impaired. It doesn't do that. And it also for our senior citizens who are mobility challenged, doing that at their home allows them to participate in the process. And so I'm deeply disturbed if we are not taking advantage of those options so that you all can participate in this civic action, if you will. Does that make sense to you? Somebody please comment.
Yes, yes. This is Shelley Freed for the record. And just to give you an example, yesterday I was summoned for jury duty. Now, I 2 months ahead of that, of the date that it was scheduled, I asked for an interpreter. 2 months in advance, I arrived yesterday to be a proud citizen, to do my duty, to be on a jury, no interpreter. In addition to that, I emailed, I said why, I'm disappointed, I asked for this in advance, I wanted to be there, I would be happy to be on a jury, but I didn't get equal access to even have the opportunity to be put on that jury. There was a Spanish interpreter there, but not a sign language interpreter when I showed up yesterday for my summons. This is Obioma, officer for the record. Your suggestion of ballot usage is what is fantastic. It's a fantastic idea. Again, having equal access and having that is, I think, incredible. But then also just setting up a way to be able to go into the poll, to have that experience too, to go in, you have that independence of a child. You look forward to the time when it's your turn to vote. You know you're old enough, and then you get to a place and nobody knows how to use it. I can't access it. So the things that we have, ballots at home is great. But then also having that experience of going into the polls, going into jury duty, going into, maybe even getting called to be on a jury. It's that continual lack of compliance with ADA. These are federal laws. Why does that happen? Why is that even an issue that there is not an interpreter present for jury duty? And this is Shelley Freed for the record. Yesterday, the woman that I spoke with said, "Oh, don't worry, you're excused." And I said, No, you don't understand. I don't want to be excused. Maybe you're used to excusing people, or people want to be excused. I don't want to be excused. What are you trying to say to me? Am I less than? I can't serve on a jury because I'm deaf, so I'm excused? I felt like, everyone else gets to go to jury duty. Everyone else is hearing they have the opportunity to serve. And this is Obioma, officer for the record. Again, the standard practice, this is the problem. The standard practice in the state of Nevada is they don't have to adhere to the ADA. That's what needs to change.
Thank you. I just want to say that in the absence of the perfect system, I would encourage you when your sample ballots come in to look at that, and you can mark it. And I believe you can take that in the booth with you. Am I correct? I believe you can take that sample ballot into the booth with you, and so you have what you want it to do, or what you want to do on the sample ballot, and you can do what you need to do if you go into a polling place. The other option would be if there's no one available or you can't get to a polling place, then when the real ballot comes in, all you have to do is fill that out according to what you've already put in the sample ballot. Does that make sense to you? And so that's not perfect, but as I said before, I advocate for vote by mail because it makes it eliminates some of the barriers. And interpreters, we don't have enough in Nevada, and we don't pay enough also. But so until we get to that point, and the thing about voting is when you vote, your voice is heard. So when you vote for someone and they, advocate for what you advocate or don't, or they're neutral, I mean, you have a say in who gets there. And so I would encourage you all to use those provisions that the state has afforded you until we get to a place where someone can meet you at the polling place. So number one, sample ballot will come in, and the sample ballot is also available online. And if you can't pull it off online, then use the paper ballot, and you can sit there and discuss with whomever you have your political conversations with, because I know you do, whoever you have the political conversations, and figure out who you want to vote for. Mark that sample ballot, and when your official mail-in ballot comes, you can fill that out. If you elect not to fill out the official ballot, then what you have to do is take that with you to the polling place so it can be destroyed. You can't do both, okay? And if you decide to go to the polling place, you can take your sample ballot, the sample ballot only, okay? So you can return the mail-in ballot or take it to the polling place and drop it in the. So you can do that. You can have that experience of going into the polls. And I would encourage you to please do that, okay? One of the reasons why we did that was to make sure that communities that were challenged with mobility, challenged with sight, challenged with hearing, or other challenges, make sure that there was a way for them to go, for them to vote, okay?
Chair Spearman, this is Eric Wilcox. Yes. Could I respond?
Yes?
Yeah, thank you. I wanted to have Catherine Nielsen here from the Governor's Council of Developmental Disabilities come and address one aspect of what you're talking about, because she was working with us on exactly this issue of voting, and I think she wanted to respond to one aspect of what you just were talking about.
Yeah, we have them on the agenda, item 10.
I'm also a commissioner, if that makes it different.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, I just
whatever
want to
works
make
for
clear
you.
that whatever you say, we can.
This is Catherine Nielsen for the record.
You can always embellish it.
Oh, I'm
Okay.
sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry.
I'm so sorry. No, I was just going to say, I'm also a commissioner for the Nevada Commission for Persons Who are Deaf and Hard of Hearing. And so I just wanted to make note that there's two parts of the online voting system. So yes, you can mail it in, and yes, you can take it with you, but there's also the opportunity to cast your vote online as well. So that's another opportunity. But the biggest thing that we have is the mail-in ballots that come are in English. And therefore, a lot of individuals who utilize American Sign Language as their primary language don't understand the ballot or can't understand the ballot. And so Ms. Officer was mentioning some of the projects that we're working on, and we are working with Mark Maloshin from the Nevada Secretary of State's office to produce some more videos. We currently have several that talk about the election cycle. And on those videos, we have an individual who's utilizing American Sign Language as well to help communicate some of that. But we understand some of those issues revolve around not knowing who to vote for as far as who is a candidate. What does a governor do? What does one of our senators or assemblywomen do, or men do? And so we really want to try and educate the community, as you said, so that they can be as involved as possible with their voting and being a part of the election cycle. Thank you.
Thank you. And we have until November. Well, I think one election will take place in June, but then you have another one in November. So however you can schedule that so that you get maximum participation with the tools that we already have in place, I would encourage you to do that. I think our legal person has a comment. Yes.
Thank you, Chair Spearman. David Noss, LCB Legal for the record. Just a clarification on SB 203. The original bill provided for a study on the feasibility of establishing a public school for pupils who are blind, visually impaired, deaf, or hard of hearing. That study was amended out before the bill was enrolled.
Voting matters. Okay. Any other comments? Any other questions? Well, thank you all. I appreciate your indulgence and your ability to, or our ability to understand everything, well, mostly everything, what you said, and I'm sure that the enlightenment will not be in vain. So, thank you. Vote.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Vote.
Chair Spearman and members of the
Thank you for
committee.
your time as well.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. I think we have someone who has to leave before 3:30, so let me pull them in. Who's that? Agenda item 11, presentation on the aging of the population in Nevada. Okay. In Carson City? Okay. Mr. Reed, proceed when you're ready.
Thank you very much, Chair Spearman and members of the committee. My name is Peter Reed, and I serve as the director of the Sanford Center for Aging at the University of Nevada, Reno School of Medicine, and also as a professor of public health. And it's in that regard that I really appreciate your accommodation and moving me up on the schedule. I do have a class that I have to teach at 4:30, so I got to race back to Reno. So really appreciate that accommodation. And thank you very much for the invitation to speak to you today about aging in Nevada and supporting quality of life. It's a topic that my team and I are really passionate about, and it also, there's a large network of aging service providers around the state that are doing everything they can really to support the quality of life and well-being of elder Nevadans. And the dialogue that you all have as a committee is really critical to that process. So I wanted to start with just an aspirational goal that I've kind of set for myself and my work in Nevada, which is that Nevada's elders will live well despite physical and cognitive changes when they receive appropriate support that matches their needs and retained abilities and preserves their autonomy and personhood. And so as I go through my presentation today, I hope you'll keep this aspiration in mind. This is not the current state of affairs as it relates to elders who are living with physical and cognitive changes. And as I present on the prevalence of chronic disease, the aging of the population, how common Alzheimer's disease and dementia are among the population, and the limitations in activities of daily living that those changes create. I hope you'll think back to this and recognize that despite those changes, if we as a community, we as a state, you as legislators, support the development and delivery of community-based supports and services and healthcare resources that people need that are individualized and tailored to their level of need, and that leverage and maximize their retained abilities, people can and will live well. And so that ultimately is the goal here. So when I say quality of life, what am I discussing? So first off, that's a concept, and certainly in the academic literature, it's often described as something that's subjective. Each of us kind of defines our own quality of life for ourselves. And for me, my quality of life would be diminished if I did not have music in my life. And so I'm sure that each of you have your own interests and preferences and things that you engage with that help to bring quality into your life. But from a healthcare perspective, when we're thinking about health-related quality of life, and particularly among the older population, we really think about that across these different domains. We're thinking about physical health, mental and emotional health, cognitive health, social health, spiritual health, environmental health, and financial health. And all of those dimensions are really needed for people to live well and maintain their health and well-being in the community. These also, when you think about these health-related domains of quality of life, these are elements that can be diminished when people develop physical and cognitive changes. If someone is living with a chronic disease that limits their independence and their activities of daily living, that can directly impact their financial health. It can directly impact their social health. Obviously, it's already impacting their physical and cognitive health and their emotional well-being as well. And that's why I draw a distinction really between quality of life and well-being. And this is a framework of well-being that was developed by an organization called the Eden Alternative that really resonates with me. And if you think about well-being as kind of being a concept or a state of being that transcends quality of life, it really is a path to a life worth living. We're thinking about concepts such as identity or being known to the people around you, having personhood and individuality, leveraging your history, growth or the opportunities for development and enrichment, learning and connecting, autonomy or self-determination and liberty and security. And that's not just physical safety when we think about security, but it's really freedom from doubt, anxiety, of fear, privacy, connectedness or belonging and social connections with others, meaning. What is important and significant to a person? What is their purpose? And joy, thinking about happiness and pleasure, and what brings them those things and happiness and pleasure. And so these domains of well-being, identity, growth, autonomy, security, connectedness, meaning, and joy, these are things that I would argue do not need to be diminished if somebody develops physical or cognitive changes. So somebody who may be living with multiple chronic conditions, living with dementia, can still experience all of these domains to a very high level. They may just need some accommodations to help to support them in achieving that level of well-being. And so I like to think about both quality of life and well-being together because they're so important and they give us opportunities to consider how, from a policy perspective or perhaps from a programmatic perspective, we can put the resources and supports in place to enable people to live well despite physical and cognitive changes. And given those aspirational goals and the definitions of quality of life and well-being, we know there are massive changes that are taking place across Nevada. These data are national data that I received from the National Center on Aging. And you can see, essentially, this is what in the field we call a demographic transition. And this may be redundant. It's some things you've already heard, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. But you can see that chart on the left demonstrates a massive shift where there is a trend towards having a much younger population to having a more even distribution of the population across various age groups. That chart to your right demonstrates that over time, and it's really tiny, and I can't pull this. There, I'll get that as close as I can. My eyes are waning. As you can see, there actually is a crossover that's going to be happening just over the next few years, in which the United States is going to, for the first time, have a higher number of people over the age of 65 than they do children under the age of 18. And so this is a massive demographic shift that's taking place across the population. And what we have to consider are what the implications of that will be. What does it mean if the population of Nevada is going to go from 14 or 15% of people over the age of 65 to 20% of the population being over the age of 65 in the next 5 years? So this is a shift that's happening very rapidly, and it's happening right now. In fact, in the United States, with the aging of the baby boom generation, there are 10,000 baby boomers turning 65 every single day. And that's going to continue for the next decade. So why do elders need support? Well, it comes back to a lot of the things that I'm sure you consider as a committee in terms of the lifelong resources that are available to help to support people in living well. And ultimately, in my view, as a public health gerontologist, it's the accumulation of risk that occurs over the entire life course. So there are social determinants of health and the conditions in which people are born, live, work, play, and age that affect their access to certain resources that are health promoting. There are behavioral and lifestyle issues that contribute. When we think about physical activity, healthy diet, tobacco use, alcohol use, these are driving chronic disease. But it's over the course of decades that these conditions develop, and therefore they're much more prominent or much more prevalent among older adults. And so when we think about the common geriatric syndromes, we really look at frailty and falls. We look at Alzheimer's disease and dementia. We look at polypharmacy, which is people who are taking too many medications, whether they're prescription or over-the-counter medications, and the interactions between those medications. And then we look at multiple chronic conditions. So people aren't living with just one chronic condition, but they may have multiple conditions. So in a healthcare context, one of the frameworks that's been developed that we teach to healthcare professionals from the Sanford Center for Aging is called the 4 M's of an age-friendly health system. And essentially what we're saying is that in any healthcare interaction with an older adult, the healthcare provider team, not just the physicians, but all members of that team, should be assessing, A, what matters most to the patient. What are their preferences and their interests for their care? Because if you're just telling someone what they should do and then blaming them when they don't follow through, calling them non-compliant, you're not taking the time as a provider to get to know what's possible for them given their personal preferences and priorities. So that's the first M, is what matters. We also look at medications, and there we're really looking at whether or not the medications that they're taking, both prescribed and unprescribed, are needed for the conditions that they may have, or whether or not there are interactions between those medications that could be creating challenges. We also look at what we call mentation, and that's really, a lot of folks have started to rename that and call it mind, because mentation is a funny word. And so really what we're capturing there is dementia, but also depression and delirium as common conditions. And then finally, mobility, again, looking at frailty and falls as a potential risk. And so we're in any healthcare visit, we really try to look at those 4 M's to understand what's happening with the whole person and where they may need both clinical or community-based supports to enable them to live well. I just want to show this slide. Again, this is from the National Council on Aging, and it demonstrates how common these conditions are. And so I really want to hit this home. You can see on this chart where it says 80%, that's 4 out of 5 people over the age of 65 are living with at least one chronic condition. And you can see that over 2/3 of people over the age of 65 are living with 2 or more chronic conditions. So these conditions are very present in the lives of elders. Now, I'm a public health professional, and I would love to tell you that if you pour all your money into public health primary prevention strategies, we can prevent this. But when you're talking about 80% and 68% as prevalence for chronic disease, I'm not sure that that's really a viable solution. I think that while we support investments in public health prevention and move upstream to try to reduce the prevalence of these, we also have to have ways to support people in living well despite these conditions. And you can see there, these are national data looking at so the top 10 chronic conditions that are there, and I would encourage you to take a closer look at those data as well. And the impact of these conditions is that they limit people's independence. Nevada is a state that is very committed to independence, and the individuals who live within this state embrace that as a core value. And so when they start to experience limitations in their activities of daily living, when people are struggling with daily hygiene, with getting themselves dressed, with successfully eating meals or going to the restroom, with getting up and down from a chair, from their bed, with mobility and walking, these limitations then require support. And there's a wide range across a continuum of long-term supports and services that are available to help people find the support that they need, though I think that a lot of that falls to families to provide support in the community, and a lot of families maybe don't have the knowledge or the skills or the resources or the ability to support their loved ones. And so it's important that we have a network of services that are capable of meeting those needs. And so what is needed for addressing quality of life and well-being? I've mentioned this multiple times: community-based supports and services. So when you're looking at opportunities from a policy perspective to invest in providing support for community-based supports and services, certainly the Nevada Aging Disability Services Division comes to mind. They are the vehicle by which Older Americans Act dollars from the federal government comes into the state and then gets distributed to community-based aging service providers. But those Older American Act dollars are necessary and not sufficient. So there's also a need for the state to invest in these resources to help ADSD provide the community-based supports that are going to help to support quality of life and well-being. We also have a great need for access to quality geriatrics healthcare. And I'm going to share a bit more about that here in Nevada. These are needs nationwide. These are just needs of elders. And I'm going to get into the Nevada data here in a second. But thinking about the availability of geriatrics, neurology, and geriatrics capable primary care is a really important need. There's also a need for access to respectful and supportive long-term care. And here I'm talking about skilled nursing and assisted living. Now, most elders do not live in residential care communities. They live in their homes in the community. But when their needs exceed the ability to have them met within their home, these are resources that are available to help to get them the supports that they need. There's also a need to respect human and legal rights. We live in a society, and I will say it, that is very ageist. We tend to be a very youth-oriented society. We're also very ableist, and we tend to be a society that prizes function. And so as people age and their abilities change, they're kind of hit with a double whammy of ageism and ableism. And a lot of times, particularly if they're diagnosed with a condition such as Alzheimer's disease, that label of having that disease or that diagnosis can result in people starting to make decisions for them instead of finding ways to support them in making decisions for themselves. And preserving the human and legal rights of elders is a really critical need. Social engagement is also an incredibly important aspect of supporting the quality of life and well-being of elders. And in our communities, we need to have social resources available to make meaningful and important connections to others and to remain engaged. So what does this look like in Nevada? Currently, 17% of Nevada is age 65 or older, and as I mentioned, that's going to get to 20% by 2030. So stunningly, we are only 5.5 years away from 2030. So that's coming very quickly. And so with 20% of the population being over the age of 65 and then it continuing to grow after that in the 2030s, I think it's really important where we have a healthcare system today that struggles to care for elders and a community-based aging services system that struggles to care for elders, and that demand is only increasing. This is, in some ways, an issue around the country, but it is more pronounced here in Nevada. Nevada is one of only 3 states with a higher than 57% increase in the percent of people over 65 between 2008 and 2018. So we're the third fastest aging state in the country. Nevada also has a highly diverse population of elders, just as we have a highly diverse population, period. So we have elders living in urban, rural, and frontier settings, tribal settings. We have a significant racial and ethnic diversity, as well as economic diversity. And if I could leave you with like one point that you're going to take home with you, is that we tend to think of elders as being very homogeneous because we have sort of this, these generational myths, right? And we can all talk about the stereotypes that exist for millennials, or I'm Gen X, so you can tell me what you think that says about me. But there are a lot of stereotypes about boomers and the greatest generation and elders, and people tend to think of them as being very similar, right? But the elder population represents all aspects of the diversity of our larger population. And so there are people with significant means and significant economic resources, and there are people with very few economic resources. There, really any aspect of the diversity of the population that you can consider, that is reflected within the population of elders. It is a very heterogeneous population. In terms of health in Nevada, recent data shows that about 25% of Nevada's elders are living with diabetes, 43% living with obesity, 10% living with dementia. This is interesting, 29% living with subjective cognitive decline. And that's the highest in the United States. Those are data that come from a population-based survey that was asking people to report on whether or not they feel their cognition has changed. So it's subjective. It's a person saying, yes, I believe I have changes in my cognition such that it is declining. But 29% of elders in our state are reporting that, and that's the highest. Now, I realize these are very small, so I encourage you to take a closer look at the slides. But these are data from the Sanford Center Geriatric Specialty Care Center. So at the Sanford Center for Aging, we have an interdisciplinary comprehensive geriatric assessment clinic in which we see complex cases that are referred by primary care providers for a specialty consult. And among the patients that we see in our clinic, and these are data of over almost 750 patients we've seen. We see an average of 3 chronic conditions with high blood pressure, high cholesterol, arthritis, depression, GI disorders, diabetes, cancer, and dementia being the most common. And we've seen 38% of our patients who've experienced a fall in the prior 6 months. Interestingly, that is aligned with national data. Up to a third of people ages 65 and older fall every year. So that's a really serious concern. And so you can see that all of those issues that I was describing in terms of chronic diseases, frailty and falls, cognitive impairment, all of these things are present or perhaps in some cases even more pronounced among the population of elders here in Nevada. So the question becomes, what do we do to address this? One critical issue, one critical need is Nevada's geriatrics workforce. There are, in 2021, 57 geriatricians in Nevada, and that is one for every almost 12,000 people over the age of 60. There is only one geriatrician practicing in a rural community. Only 13% of Nevada's advanced practice nurses specialize in adult gerontology. And so you can see that on the geriatric specialty side, there really are limited resources available for caring for elders. And so there's a key point here, which is that it's unlikely, no matter what efforts we put in place, that we're going to be able to recruit and train enough geriatric specialists to meet the needs of our rapidly aging population. And so that speaks to a shift in focus really needing to happen such that we are enabling all healthcare providers, not just geriatric specialists, to have a basic level of geriatrics and neurology competency in serving their older patients. If we can build that capacity among the primary care provider network, then that will give us an opportunity to use our limited geriatric specialists really for the most complicated cases and as consultants to the primary care providers who are capable of caring for elders in their own right. So when I think about key recommendations, kind of at the general level, again, certainly we need to be thinking about how to put more investments into our community-based aging supports and services to build our infrastructure and our capacity. And when I'm thinking of these services, you can almost think of it as a pyramid, that kind of hierarchy of needs. It starts at the basic level. We're talking about things like transportation and affordable housing and food security. And then it moves up into access to effective geriatrics competent primary care, effective geriatric specialty care and neurology. It moves up into social engagement opportunities and civic engagement opportunities in the community. So really thinking about all the different dimensions of a person's life and how when someone is developing limitations in their activities of daily living, they need accommodations and support to help to meet and fulfill those needs. So that means also there's a need for training, education, and workforce development. We are blessed here in the state of Nevada. Currently, we have 2 federal awards under, it's from the Health Resources and Services Administration. It's called the Geriatrics Workforce Enhancement Program. There is a grant at the University of Nevada, Reno, and a grant at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. We work together very closely to develop and deliver training for primary care providers on geriatrics. As you're aware, grants have end dates, and the end date for those grants is June 30th. We are both still waiting to hear on our proposals. If we are fortunate to both be funded again, that would be a $10 million investment by the federal government in geriatrics education in our state. But these are competitive proposals, and so fingers are crossed. So really hopeful that that will come through. Either way, there is a need to increase investments in graduate medical education so that we're training residents and fellows in caring for elders. There's a need for geriatrics and neurology basics for all trainees in medicine, nursing, social work, physician assistants, public health, psychology, and all other health professions. And it is incumbent upon us to build the healthcare workforce that's going to be needed to care for the population of elders that we are experiencing here in this state because of all of those needs that I just mentioned. I want to take a step and focus a little bit specifically on Alzheimer's disease and dementia. And I did provide to you as a handout today the Nevada State Plan to address Alzheimer's disease and other dementias. I serve as a member of the Nevada Task Force on Alzheimer's disease, and so I had the opportunity to help develop this state plan along with a wonderful group of colleagues that serve on that task force. We release a state plan of recommendations every 2 years, so the most recent is for 2023-2024. And I want to, particularly from a policy perspective, draw your attention to 3 specific recommendations. The first 2, recommendation number 4, outreach to primary care providers, and recommendation number 5, dementia care specialist programs. Both of these were brought forward in the last legislative session as bills. And unfortunately, neither of them made it through the entire process. In fact, I believe that the bill that came out from our recommendation on outreach to primary care providers, which was to establish the Nevada Memory Net, or a network of dementia assessment clinics around the state using a hub and spoke model to serve rural communities in addition to our urban communities. I believe that was a bill that came out of this committee. So I want to thank you all for your support of those efforts. And I would encourage you to take another look at that recommendation and consider what opportunities there would be to move forward the establishment of a Nevada Memory Networks, because I could go on a whole nother talk about the importance of early detection and accurate diagnosis for Alzheimer's disease and dementia. And we really live right now in Nevada in a neurology desert. And so investing resources where they're needed to help to build that capacity to identify people who are living with dementia would be an enormous step forward in being able to connect them then with the community-based supports and services that they have. I will say that model that was proposed in that bill was replicated from a model that exists within the state of Georgia, and it is in the Georgia state budget as a line item specifically for their memory assessment clinics. I believe it's $7 million a year. We were not asking for anywhere near that amount to be able to start this up here in Nevada, but I encourage you to take another look at that. That was SB 297 in the last session. Similarly, the Dementia Care Specialists program is a program that would work with the senior centers in every county in Nevada to embed a dementia care specialist who could help to provide supports to people living with dementia in those communities to connect them with the needed resources that are available within their communities. That, again, also is based on a model that was developed in Wisconsin, where that is a thriving program. Fortunately, I will say that initiative with the dementia care specialists actually has taken root in the form of a pilot. So our colleagues at the Nevada Aging Disability Services Division were able to get a federal grant from the Administration for Community Living. That is a 3-year federal grant, and they are going to be launching a dementia care specialist program with a handful of specialists in a handful of counties. But the opportunity exists to leverage the good results from that pilot through the legislative session and then really ensure that that is a resource that's available to elders across the state in every community. And finally, I want to draw your attention to recommendation number 17, which is called Choice in Care and Care Settings. And you'll remember back in my introduction when I was talking about the need to help to preserve human and legal rights, to preserve self-determination and autonomy. And if you review recommendation number 17 in our state plan, you will see that there are some challenges, not only in Nevada, but really around the country, in terms of the use of segregated and locked residential care units for people living with dementia. And the research that was done to inform that recommendation was completed by Dr. Jennifer Carson, who's a colleague of mine at the University of Nevada, Reno, and also serves on the task force for Alzheimer's disease. And she was able to do a really good job describing the legal basis for that recommendation, drawing upon the 1999 Supreme Court Olmstead decision, as well as the Americans with Disabilities Act. And essentially, and I realize this is contrary to frequent practice, and I think that's because of a lack of awareness, but legally there are only 2 people who can place a person in a locked memory care unit, even if that person is living with dementia. And those 2 people are the person themselves choosing to live within a special care unit or a memory care unit, or a legal guardian. So that person would have had to gone through the guardianship process within the courts and have that guardian assigned, and then that person could make that decision. But it is common practice for family members to make the recommendation, for a physician to make the recommendation, or for the marketing person at a residential care community to sell someone on the idea of a memory care unit. And I'm not criticizing memory care units. They provide a really valuable resource. What I am doing is just reminding us that legally, even when someone has a diagnosis of dementia, they have the right to determine their own living situation and their own living environment. And so I would just encourage you to take a look at that recommendation and consider if there are any potential policy directions that could help to, at a minimum, raise awareness of this fact and help to restore that right to people living with dementia. And I might even recommend that you invite Dr. Jennifer Carson to come and speak in depth on this recommendation, because she really has significant expertise and has done a lot of research on this topic to understand the law and to identify ways to help to raise awareness of the law. And with that, I would be happy, I did provide my references here in going through the presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have. And I don't have to just quite rush up there, depending on what the traffic looks like getting back to Reno, but I do have some time for questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Committee members, any questions? Assemblyman De Silva?
Thank you, Chair, and good to see you again, Professor Reed. I believe I met you when I toured UNR's Stanford Center earlier this year. I just had a question about, I know this has been a growing sort of a topic in the communities that I'm with, at senior centers, when I'm knocking on doors. As elected officials, we know that a majority of voters tend to be above the age of 55. I think in my district, it's almost like more than 2/3, like almost 70% of the voters are. So I get to have a tremendous amount of conversations as a younger person with seniors here in our state. So one thing that does come about has really been the sense of, and I think you mentioned it here, connectedness, and that there's been a anxiety that's being built up within not just seniors. I mean, I think this is a prevalent issue throughout all age groups. about the lack of interconnectedness. And I know that we really focus on some of the physical ailments that are of concern here. But I was wondering if you could speak a little bit more about social connectivity and some of those issues that also are of concern to us. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much for that question. And you're absolutely right. Social isolation and loneliness are historically very significant problems among the older population. And I'll just start with that historical element for a minute. And that's because as people age, they experience loss. And so, they may experience a loss of a spouse. They experience, if they have children, those children become adults. They perhaps are moving away. When they retire, there's a lot of socialization that takes place in the workplace. And so finding ways to offer opportunities for people to stay meaningfully engaged in civic events and opportunities in the community, but also finding ways to help to alleviate that social isolation that has been a problem for decades is critical. Now, what I would say is that the pandemic did not do us any favors in terms of social isolation. And it also gave us all a sense of what it means to be homebound and to be isolated from face-to-face interactions with folks. And so finding ways to address social isolation among the elder community was something that was a big focus during the pandemic, because if it was a problem before, it was a crisis during the pandemic. And so there were a lot of resources developed leveraging telehealth technology, but also thinking about ways to bring people together to foster and support social connections and social connectedness. And those resources are very important. We have a program at the Sanford Center for Aging that's funded by the Nevada Aging Disability Services Division called Senior Outreach Services, in which we recruit volunteers to go into the homes of isolated homebound elders and provide them with companionship. And so a lot of folks may say, oh, well, why are we using funding to provide a program to offer companionship? Well, it's because of the plague of loneliness and isolation among elders. And so, yeah, it's a critically important component. And I will say that even in our clinical context, it's something that we focus on. So our interdisciplinary comprehensive assessment is not just a medical assessment, but we have a team of providers that meets with each patient as well as with their families at the same time. And that includes a medical provider, but also a geriatric pharmacist to look at polypharmacy issues, and clinical social workers who are looking at their living environment, their psychosocial needs, and thinking about what types of social resources we'll be needing to help to maintain quality of life and well-being. And it's not something that I included in the prevalence data, and so I appreciate you bringing that up, because it is very much an important need to address as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Additional questions? Carson City? Okay, don't see any, so let me.
Ma'am.
Yeah. Who said that?
Sorry, I think that was delayed. I said no, ma'am.
Okay. Okay. So just a couple of things, and let me start with, where'd you go? There you go. Okay. So the first thing I want to start. First presentation today was with Silver State Equality, and talked about to a certain extent what that looks like for seniors in that community. With the information that you have and the studies that have been done, have there been any that looked specifically at those individuals?
And when you say at those individuals, are you, in the context of equality, are you
seniors,
referring to income inequality or racial
No,
diversity?
Seniors in the LGBTQ plus community.
Okay. Yes, absolutely. So there are many LGBT elders, as you're aware, and that certainly is a population that we want to be able to serve effectively with the resources that we're offering. And what I will tell you is that I think that the work that we do at the Sanford Center for Aging, and that I'm aware of with other aging service providers as well, we approach it with a spirit of cultural humility. And so we do not believe that we're ever capable of being culturally competent in the backgrounds of all of the people that might come to us for supports and services. And so whether it's a member of the LGBTQ community or a member of any other potentially vulnerable group, we really approach it with the desire to get to know who they are as a person, not as a group of people, but who they are as an individual and what their preferences are and how those preferences align with their needs as well as their strengths and retained abilities. And so we think about that in the context of care as being a person-centered approach or a patient-centered approach, which are buzzwords but mean a lot in terms of our opportunities to individualize the support that people receive. And so we welcome people from the LGBT community to leverage and take advantage of the resources. I will say that at least in our portfolio, we do not have anything specific for that community, but there certainly is research on the needs of the LGBTQ elder community. And then through our embracing the value of cultural humility and patient-centered approaches to care, we certainly are capable of supporting them with any of the programs or clinical services that we offer.
Thank you. And next thing is just really a comment on recommendation 17, choice in care and settings. You said there are only 2 people that could legally confine someone with dementia to a locked facility, yes?
Correct. And that is the person living with dementia and a legal guardian.
Okay. So I want to say it was 2017, Southern Nevada Legal, they brought a bill, and I believe we might have strengthened that so that if that is happening, we can make sure that we take care of it according to statute. Okay?
Right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Last thing is, and this is more a comment as well, because it looks like what our population is doing is it's inverting. You know, we've got here at the top, we've got people under 50, and then you have people over 50. But now what we're looking at is it's shifting. So is there anything that you all have thought of or that you could think of, and you take some time on your way back to Reno, about doing some intergenerational things, because I find that those are the things that really would mean the most, especially to seniors whose grandchildren have their children have moved away and they have limited contact with their grandchildren. In Texas, we had a program, Roots, Rearing Our Own to Succeed, and it was the seniors in the community that came to the after-school program to read to mostly elementary school children, and it was the seniors in the community that fixed dinner for them, because for many of them, lunch would be the last meal that they would have until breakfast the next day. So just a thought.
Yes, thank you very much for that thought, Chair Spearman, and I think you're absolutely right. Anything we can do to foster intergenerational connectedness is positive, both for the elders and for the youth, and everyone in between. And so we certainly try to develop opportunities to support that in the work that we do at the Sanford Center for Aging. And in fact, one thing I did not mention is that we do have an academic program that focuses on teaching gerontology to undergraduate students at the university, and there are many service learning opportunities within that program to give them the chance specifically to engage in intergenerational service, but also just social engagement with elders. And that's just one small example, but I take your point, and that's absolutely something that should be cultivated and fostered over time, because the more young people know about the experiences of elders, not only the greater empathy will they have for investing in the services that are required, or perhaps going into the field of gerontology and geriatrics, but it also helps them to see their own future, which is a really important thing. And it increases, back to the original question from the Assemblyman, it increases social engagement opportunities for elders as well as a way to reduce isolation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And as you grab your keys and get ready to walk out the door, I have a theory that has not been disproven, and that is if you don't die young, you're going to get old.
That's exactly. There is only one alternative to aging, and you just hit the nail on the head with that one.
Yeah, and ain't nobody rushing to that one.
That's right.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Reed. So let's jump to item number 10.
Thank you.
Overview of Nevada Governor's Council on Developmental Disabilities, emphasis on the 5-year state plan.
Did we miss
No. We got to leave.
Okay, good afternoon, Senator Spearman and other members of this committee. My name is Catherine Nielsen. I'm the Executive Director of the Nevada Governor's Council on Developmental Disabilities, and I have with me today
Alyssa Marquez from her record. Your turn.
my name is Alyssa Marquez, and I am presenting with her, and I am the intern for the council. Alyssa is going to help me run my PowerPoint today, as she is our main intern for the office, and she absolutely loves doing some of that work for us. Okay. So I'm first going to provide you with a few statistics, and I know you guys heard a lot today, so I'm going to do my best to try and CDC, the Centers for Disease Control, the most recent data that they put out in 2021. In our state, for adults with disabilities, we have 29.9% have any disability, 13.9% have a cognitive disability, 6.8% have a hearing disability, 13.8% have a mobility or a physical disability, 6.3% have a vision disability, 4.7% have a self-care disability, 8.3% have an independent living disability, and 70.1% have no disability at all. And I also provided you with some hard numbers so you guys can see exactly how many individuals you are representing when making these decisions. I also provided you guys with some data. Now, the printout that I believe you guys have does not have this data because the day that we turned this information into Ms. Cooper, the RISP state profile data were released as well. So I wanted to add this, and you guys can also look this up on the RISP state profiles data for Nevada that was just released last week. So as of 2020, a majority of the individuals with disabilities are living in their family homes. Some own their own homes. A few live with host or foster families, and a small number live in group or residential care facilities, as represented on this slide here. The goal of long-term services and supports, or LTSS, which is a unit of Nevada Medicaid, is to support those individuals who need ongoing care due to age, physical or intellectual disabilities, or chronic illnesses. It's actually a comprehensive service that delivers in-home and community-based settings or long-term care facilities, depending on the needs of the or preferences of the individual. As you guys heard a lot today about home and community-based services. The other piece, again, is also from that RISP data, and this is the status of Nevada's Medicaid recipients as well. This is as reported by Aging and Disability Services. So the second chart actually shows you over time the number of people that are served by our state IDD agencies, the number of people with IDD receiving one or more long-term support services. This is also in addition to those that receive case management, and the number of people with IDD that are currently waiting for Medicaid waiver-funded services while living with a family member or in their own home. And again, this information was reported directly from Medicaid, so I won't speak on their behalf, but this is something that you can look up available on the RISP state profiles. So there is an average amount spent per person by age and by setting that is also reported by Medicaid as well. So currently in the state of Nevada, we have one ICF, which is located in southern Nevada, that's state ran, that's Desert Regional Center. So an ICF ID can also mean a smaller setting as well, but essentially an institutional-like setting. Go ahead, and we currently spend on all ages $224,571 per year per person. Now, if we serve these individuals with a waiver, we're only spending about $57,720, and that is for home and community-based services for all ages. There's not much of a difference for those that are considered 22 and up, because below the age of 22, they're typically served within the school district setting. And then we also provided information on those who do not live in a family home. It's slightly more expensive for us to provide them with services. But for those that are living in their family home over the age of 22, so mainly host home providers and family home providers, we're only spending roughly $14,724 to serve them. As of right now, there are a lot of agencies that don't pay family home providers, but the few that do are obviously taking a dramatic savings financially by ensuring that the families or those that support these individuals are reimbursed for their services to these individuals as well, rather than paying somebody from outside the home to come in and provide those services. You guys asked us to talk to you a little bit about our key council activities. I've presented here a lot in front of the legislature, so I'm sure you know a lot about who the DD Council is. We're authorized by the Developmental Disabilities Act, but our purpose really is to independently educate the governor and you all here at the legislature on public policy issues. So anytime that we testify, we really try to make sure that it is education-based and advocacy-based in the sense that we voice the community's concerns as well if they bring them to us. We also engage in community advocacy, systemic change, and capacity building activities. We do so through a lot of different community events, trainings like our partners in policy making, etc., where we educate individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities or their family members on how to be active in policy making. One second. So the other focus is on obviously individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities and their families, as well as the community that supports them. Our council is 60% based individuals and their family members so that they always have the voice representing what is being changed for them. We also gather input from the community on services available, any barriers that they've faced, and we create a 5-year state plan to address the most pressing issues that are identified. And I'll talk to you a little bit about how we do that when I identify what the top barriers have been identified as of this year. And these are all outlined in the Developmental Disabilities and Bill of Rights Act, so we can't just randomly pull up these topic areas. They are those that are identified federally. And then long-term, people with intellectual and developmental disabilities and their family members will be full and equal participants in decisions that affect their lives. I'm sure that you've heard the term "nothing about us without us," but essentially we promote the term "nothing about us" or "nothing without us," because really every part of the human life encompasses individuals with disabilities. So you should be having no discussions, plans, events without ensuring that you are including the disability community. So what are the top areas gathered for our current plan? The last year, or the last 5-year state plan that started in 2016 and ends 2017 and ends shortly, or 2021. I'm throwing my numbers off. Started in 2021, ends in 2026. The top areas that we've identified are employment, health, education, quality assurance, transportation, and housing, and those were identified by the community themselves. So they also asked us to identify what are the top barriers to accessing these areas of emphasis. Number one, always long wait lists for services. That is the biggest piece that we hear all the time, is long wait lists everywhere we go, whether or not they're approved or whether they are approved yet waiting for a service. We also hear that not knowing what services are available. So there was mention earlier about not knowing where they go or who or what handles what. We know that that's a barrier, and we're currently working with Aging and Disability Services and other state agencies to kind of streamline that process. So when somebody applies for a service, they apply for one service, and therefore they get to know what all the other services that they qualify for with a one-stop shop. And so then we also say not enough services or supports for residential or assisted living or other housing options. We understand that as well. We're working with the Gwynn Center to produce a report that talks about the landscape of housing currently. That will be released in June, where it talks about, or hopefully it will be released in June, where it's talking about all of the different housing options, barriers to accessing housing, and what is currently the landscape for anybody who lives in the state of Nevada to access housing as well. There's not enough accessible or affordable transportation options. I'm sure that this is something you guys hear a lot. We are a primarily rural state, and we don't have any sort of coordinated transportation systems, especially something that leads from the south to the north. You could drive from Las Vegas to pretty much the Fallon area and pass less than a dozen people, especially if you're driving in the middle of the night. It's very hard to reach between the south and the north, and a lot of people end up leaving the state in order to get services because it's simply quicker to head over to Utah, Arizona, or California from the various areas than it is to go to the other half of our state. There's not enough, and people cannot access coordinated health, dental, mental health, or any other human and social services. As you guys heard from Aging and Disability Services earlier, we are working extremely hard to expand services and especially waiver options for those in Nevada. They've added things to dental health to expand those services, but we are working with the other areas, especially areas of mental health, to ensure that those with IDD are addressed. As you heard from the gentleman prior, dementia being a very large topic here right now, a lot of individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities, and primarily those with diagnoses such as Down syndrome, do go on to develop dementia. So it is a project of our office to make sure that we offer not only screening tools, but training for support providers and service providers in the industry. We don't have enough transition services from school into adulthood, and currently a lot of individuals, especially those who are deaf and hard of hearing, or for those who have a lack of a family support as well, aren't getting information on transition, especially their transition options. And if they do get information on transition, it's very limited, and it's usually coming directly from the teacher. The school districts are not held responsible to make sure that transition services are provided. Vocational rehab is working on the pre-ETS, or the pre-employment training services for transition, but this fails to address any of the students who maybe are not considering employment directly after high school. And so we want to make sure that you guys know we are working on educating as many of the students and families on their transition options, and also the professionals that work alongside of them so that they can help encourage that as well. One of our key projects under that is our Youth Empowering Students, or our YES program, where we have young adults who go into the schools and teach them for us, because I'm sure they're tired of hearing from mom and dad and all of the rest of the professionals in front of them, but they listen a lot better to their friends and their peers. So we have peers going into the schools to teach about that. We do not have enough services or supports for getting or keeping a paying job, and that kind of also leads into the supports that vocational rehab is expanding right now as well. And we are also working with them to help ensure that there's access to employment across the spectrum. As of right now, a lot of employers hesitate to hire people with disabilities, and it's usually for a lack of not knowing the information out there, statistics, the general understanding of how to hire and keep somebody employed with a disability. We are actually working on the Employment First Coalition, and have been working with a couple of your past legislators, as well as Governor Lombardo's office, to see if there's a possibility of us moving forward an Employment First initiative in the state. Governor Sandoval did sign an Employment First initiative several years ago that was not carried through Sisolak's time in office, or Governor Sisolak's time in office. So we're hopeful that Governor Lombardo, seeing as supportive as he is on employing the state of Nevada, will continue to support that effort as well. And then obviously we have a lot of Hispanic and rural communities, and I should have added to this as well that the tribal communities as well are lacking in a lot of the areas of emphasis. And so we're working to ensure that we reduce a lot of those barriers. We provide all of our information in as many languages as possible, including American Sign Language and Braille printing as well. And then we do also try to do coordinated outreach to the rural communities where we go actually in person and see them as well. So we've also started our 5-year state plan initiatives for the next 5-year state plan, where we're gathering input from the community right now on the different areas that they are currently lacking in the state of Nevada. A lot of the comments that we get are related to other state agencies, not necessarily ours, but the concerns that they have with other state agencies. So we've been working to share that information with the other state agencies as well about any comments that maybe impact their service delivery. As of right now, we have 400 plus responses to our survey as I looked this morning. So we have some key activities. Oops, we'll go back here one more. Oh, I'm missing a slide here, but the top areas of emphasis gathered for our current state plan kind of roll into what we are gathering for our next state plan as well. So some of our key projects obviously work on policy making, education. We try to come here as much as possible anytime that there is a bill that impacts the disability community, our council, or any state employees. We really try to be here to provide policy making education, but we also try to not take the voice from people with disabilities. So if they themselves would like to come here, they ask for so maybe financial assistance with transportation to be here. We really try to make sure that that is coordinated for them, so that finance is never a reason not to make sure that their voice is heard. We do our partners in policy making education as well. We have council and committee participation, and our council is fully committed to ensuring the lives of people with intellectual and developmental disabilities are addressed in all areas of the state and the state's work, as well as our committee members. We have individuals on our council that represent most of the state agencies like Aging and Disability Services, Welfare and Supportive Services, Maternal and Child Health, etc. We also try to reduce barriers to accessing information. You guys heard a lot from the deaf and hard of hearing community and those who are blind and visually impaired. They have an extremely hard and difficult time accessing information, much more difficult than it should be. And we've worked a long time with a couple of your legislators who are actively pushing for language access, especially last year. A lot of the bills were talking about ensuring that we had access to the top 12 common languages in the state of Nevada, but failed to address American Sign Language as being a language. I remember that, and I can't off the top of my head remember which one of your legislators sponsored the bill, but there was a language access plan that actually started to include and amended to include visual languages as well as written and verbal. We also work on community education activities, so we do try to educate the community as much as possible in different various aspects of the disability community. We do a leadership training. Like we said, we do try to train the leaders in our community to be more involved in their policy making with the youth and our youth empowering students. And we also have our partners in policy making, which is for any adult over the age of 18 to participate in policy making activities as well. We hold lunch and learn webinars, which we have throughout the year. We will continue throughout the rest of the year that are held from 12 to 1 p.m. multiple times a month on various topics. We've had a lot of federal representatives come and present to our state as well during those lunch and learns. And then we hold our self-advocacy conference. This year it's being held August 6th and 7th in Reno. If you guys are available or around and would like to learn more about the disability community, this event is planned by individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities for them. And we invite you to come learn alongside the individuals that you are making decisions on behalf of. And we have on August 5th a self-advocates networking night, which again will offer the opportunity for self-advocates to come together. So some of the key activities and projects includes emerging needs as well. We've been working with the Division of Emergency Management on emergency preparedness. Go ahead. And we've been working on ensuring that the access and functional needs population is included in all aspects of emergency planning. As of right now, FEMA has actually eliminated the need for the G197 course in all states and has left it to the states to do that work. So essentially, the access and functional needs planning is left up to the states to determine if it's a high enough need or not. It is such a high enough need in Nevada that the last time we had a mass shooting at the end of last year, there was a student that had disabilities that was left in the building unplanned for. So we are working with UNLV to make sure that never happens again. Self-advocacy organization support. So there's a couple of self-advocacy organizations across the state of Nevada, so we do try to support them as much as possible. For instance, the Action Club out of Gardnerville, we've sent them to a couple of conferences to expand their knowledge. The ARC of Southern Nevada, we helped pay for their brochures and a couple of tablecloths so that they could reach out to the community and ensure that they were networking with their community and building the new organization that they have. And we try to make sure that self-advocates are at the top of everything here. We work in cross-disability and cultural diversity. You heard a lot from the Deaf and Hard of Hearing Commission earlier today. We also work with those who are blind and visually impaired, and we have also added a land acknowledgement to all of our agendas to ensure that those who are in tribal communities have a lot of access to information and feel included everywhere we go. We have other community projects and grants as well. As of right now, we are working to reduce barriers to accessing transportation, which is the I Can Bike camp that we have put on. This would be the third camp that we just completed in Las Vegas. We have another one coming in Reno where we teach individuals with disabilities 8 years and older, all the way up into their aging years, how to ride a bike. And it's something that a lot of people take advantage of if they don't necessarily have that skill, or if they do have that skill and never use it. And so it's a big piece of talking about the lack of transportation that we talked about earlier being a barrier, is that a lot of areas in our state, transportation shuts down at 5 o'clock. So from 5 o'clock on, how do the individuals with disabilities get to a grocery store, go visit their friends, see a movie, go to dinner, get their meds from a store, anything of that nature? It's really hard. And so by providing another opportunity for transportation, like teaching them how to ride a bike, we've expanded those opportunities as well. We also have employment as one of our goals. We have in the past provided training to employers about making sure that they are inclusive in their hiring practices and making sure that they have a diverse workforce. We are continuing to work on employment through our transition goal as well as through some of our other grant opportunities. We also would like to improve access to housing options. As we talked about, we'll be utilizing the Gwynn Center report that's going to be available in just about 2 months, which will talk about the in-depth analysis of the landscape of housing options here in Nevada. But we have a long-term goal to increase access to housing options and to ensure that housing options are fully accessible to those with disabilities as well as the rest of the community, and that they're integrated in the community. We also want to increase access to quality services for individuals transitioning into adulthood. As we mentioned, our YES program is helping us do that, and we will continue doing that. So we have already started gathering input from the disability community. As I mentioned, we have over 400 responses as of this morning, and we just released that survey in January. This has already been sent out by, the whole state, Nevada Center for Excellence in Disabilities, ADSD, the Nevada Disability Advocacy and Law Center, vocational rehab, and maternal and child health. So a lot of the state agencies that serve the disability community are the ones collecting this information as well as sending them our way. The survey is going to close January of 2025. At that point, there will be a report released, especially to you representatives, on what the disability community is stating are their biggest barriers and what are the barriers for them at being able to access that. And in March of 2025, we will have a draft plan for everybody to review and provide any public comments on as well. Our current survey has identified several areas of need and the 6 areas of greatest importance as of, well, what time is it? I think 9 a.m. this morning. I double-checked some of those statistics, were employment, health, education, recreation, transportation, and housing. The only one that changed from last time was recreation. And we are trying to expand our opportunities to expand opportunities for recreation, because recreational activities aren't just about going out and having fun. They build a sense of community, networking, and skills that cannot be taught in a lot of other settings. So our current survey has identified barriers to getting those needs. Biggest barrier is long wait lists for services, and as much as we take a look at the numbers that Aging and Disability Services presented to you this morning, even one person on a wait list is long enough to say we need to work on this, and we need to make sure that we are addressing the needs of those that have the greatest importance for supported services. We don't have enough school services or supports. You heard from the Deaf and Hard of Hearing Commission that we don't have a deaf school that is specific for those who are deaf and hard of hearing. And we have a lot of children inside of the school districts that are experiencing a great injustice. I tried to file a complaint with the U.S. Department of Justice, especially on the status of our education here in the state of Nevada. I gave them exact verbiage, quotes from paraprofessionals, quotes from parents. But unless we were able to provide them names of parents and names of students, there's nothing that the U.S. Department of Justice is willing to do moving forward with that complaint. So we put that on you guys to ensure that the Department of Education is held responsible for their requirements, and that they are the ones that are ensuring that the school districts are listening and following the rules. The unfortunate mentality of our school districts in the state of Nevada, especially for those who are deaf and hard of hearing, is they can't hear us, so what does it matter to them anyway? And these exact words have come out of principals' mouths, out of Washoe County School District, out of paraprofessionals, teachers who are trusted to educate our students are talking about our students this way. We don't have enough and cannot access recreational activities. Like I said, recreational activities are much more than just going out and having fun with our friends. They build skills, a sense of community, and a network. There's not enough, and they can't access coordinated health, dental, mental health, and other human and social services. It's not changing. Over the last 6-7 years now that we have been having the same exact goal on our plan, we don't have enough coordinated health. We are getting there on dental, but our mental health and our human and social services are still greatly lacking. And we would love to see you guys address those needs. We also don't have enough transition services from school into adulthood, and as we mentioned, we are working with vocational rehab to address some of those concerns, and we commend them on their efforts and their work moving forward. So specific comments on identified needs. Now, these are comments directly from the surveys themselves. Their statements are such things as people are leaving our state at alarming rates to receive services. People have to leave Nevada. They need to go somewhere other than here to get a service. And it's your job to make sure that those services are supported financially, and as well as the fact that their networks are built with sturdiness. We do not have services that provide support to anyone with no habilitative needs, such as under the age of 55, without employment goals, or those that are over the age of 55. So if somebody under the age of 55 does not have an employment goal, they don't really have a service in order for them to go and provide or get services provided to them. And those that are over the age of 55 have a lot of lack of services as well. You heard from the Sanford Center on Aging that this is something that we need to address. I already told you that deaf students, both children and adults, have a lack of services across the board, and even our own state is lacking in providing those same services. We have an interpretation team for the state of Nevada, but many individuals with disabilities, and as well as other state services, don't even know that they exist or that they could provide them with interpretation services. We support to the teachers of those who have intellectual or developmental disabilities, especially those in the rural or frontier areas of Nevada, and those who provide the services to those who are deaf, hard of hearing. They're basically virtually non-existent. There are no supports for our teachers, especially the teachers that want to do the work, especially the teachers who have their hands tied, and if they say anything, they're going to lose their job. And that's the problem that we are left with now, is that every single story we hear from paraprofessionals and teachers is that they're afraid they're going to lose their job if they speak up, and that's not right. We also know affordable housing is scarce. Affordable housing is scarce for everyone, every population. Every person is having trouble accessing housing. And so we are, again, with the Gwynn Center's support and your guys' support, hopeful that we can make an impact on housing for everyone, especially those with disabilities in Nevada. Again, transportation beyond Reno and Las Vegas is virtually non-existent. This was a comment that was echoed at least 30 times in various different comments. We don't have anything outside of Reno or Las Vegas. We have no way to get from Reno to Las Vegas unless you fly, drive, or hitchhike through where they have the Clown Motel. So we want to make sure that we get some sort of work in transportation. If there's a way that we can help support the regional transportation commissions, they're doing some really great work to coordinate transportation. Mental health is greatly lacking in every area for every person, whether it be in the prison systems, whether it be out into the community. Mental health is scarce everywhere. I know that telemedicine is not ideal, but it is something that is helping bridge the gap here in the state currently. So more access to telemedicine services, especially mental health care, is something that has been identified as a way to bridge that gap. We also have a lack of staff or quality staff. I've heard it from a million different times that vocational rehabilitation really struggles to get some of their rehab counselors, or struggles to keep their rehab counselors, and that's not any different from any other agencies. It seems that us state employees, some of us realize that we can make a lot more money working outside of the state, or some of us realize that the federal government typically pays a lot more to do the same job too. So we really would like to see an increase for those that are state employees. The reason that we don't have any staff is because you don't pay us enough to do this job. And I've been in this room since 9 a.m. this morning, and it's almost 4 o'clock, and I guarantee that a lot of people don't have that same desire to continue to fight and get paid hardly anything to do it. And that's why we currently have a lack of staff. And we also don't have a lot of quality staff. Our interpreters in the state of Nevada, the few of them that are quality, they really work hard, and they have to make up for the other ones that are not. And a lot of our students in schools are the ones that get that biggest impact and the biggest lack of quality in staff. Okay, so we have position statements. I'm not going to read all of their topics, but you can visit them online if you want to start clicking through there. We have 19 total, and these are position statements that have been vetted, discussed thoroughly. They go through the history of the different topics, tell you where we're at with the state of Nevada, and then they make any policy recommendations on behalf of the intellectual developmental disability community. So we have 19 total. You can click through the whole thing. I'm not going to read any of the names off for you guys, but they're all the various topics that impact everyone in this community. We are also adding emergency preparedness, community events, and disability policymaking as a position statement as well. The last thing that I'm going to, or the last two things that I'll talk to you about are suggestions to be included, to include the disability community in the legislature. This was one thing that they had asked for me to talk about today, is how do we ensure that we have more people with disabilities that are involved in the legislature? First thing you can do is change our Constitution. The language is disrespectful and demeaning. If we're calling people deaf and dumb, do you think they want to come and sit here in front of you? I know that we're working hard to change our Constitution, so I echo and I encourage you to continue to work hard to do that. We ask you to also increase accessibility. I see for the very first time today a sign language interpreter on the screen, staying on the screen the entire time. There have been many, many, many times that we have had people who are deaf and hard of hearing come to the legislature, request an interpreter, even on our deaf day at the legislature, and they remove the interpreter from the screen at various parts of hearings, especially when it comes to your guys' votes on the floor. There is no interpreter on the screen. So we urge you, we beg you, to please increase accessibility. Provide interpreters, and provide them all the time. The fact that I've seen interpreters on this screen the entire day, I understand was probably a financial hit for you guys, but imagine what it feels like to come to this room and sit here in silence and not have any idea what you're talking about. Also, double check your links, double check them on the agendas. Sometimes they're broken. It happens to the best of us. It does. It really does. And so just making sure that you have somebody that double checks those links. It happened at least a dozen times last legislative session. So we're hopeful that with as many opportunities to provide our input, that those get checked. Provide multiple options to participate as well. Just calling in on the phone to provide your comment is difficult to some people, but I love that you guys are also increasing access by allowing them to submit things prior, allowing people to come in person, Zoom, etc. That's really awesome. Increase your building accessibility as well. I love that you guys are doing a lot of work to increase the design. So as you guys are including any sort of design builds or changes, just make sure that you are ensuring accessibility when you do that as well. Next. Go ahead. Increase opportunities. I would love to see you guys have some interns here with disabilities. We brought our intern today, Miss Alyssa, because she very much enjoys being an intern with us and coming to the legislature. She told me that I could not run the PowerPoint today, that was her job. So last year, Assemblywoman Tracy Brown May brought her in as an intern as well. So I just encourage you guys to offer that opportunity to your constituents as well. Ms. Krasner is our senator up here, so we're going to see if we can get our intern into her office this year as well. Again, I talked about nothing without us. If you're planning something, please make sure you're planning for the disability community. Universal design works for everyone, so nothing about us without us has actually now transitioned to nothing without us. Disability is a natural part of the human experience. It doesn't discriminate. It happens in utero. We still have to deal with disabilities when it comes to how do we deal with somebody's human remains after their life as well. So from before birth till after death, it impacts everyone, and universal design can work for everyone. So some of those key takeaways, and I'm going to try and talk quickly so I can just get through this for you guys, is that the barriers are not changing. The people with disabilities are telling you.
Yeah, well, guess what? You said you had to leave, but we've got some questions, so if you can just,
I'm just going to skip through, and there's the key takeaways. Go ahead with your questions.
Hello. Yeah, we can read the takeaways. They're on the screen now. So first of all, let me just say this, because I don't want anybody to go away with the wrong interpretation. The legislature doesn't do the budget. The budget is done with the legislature and the executive branches, and both have input in that. With regard to changing the Constitution that doesn't call people deaf and dumb, I would encourage whoever said that to go to the new portion of the Constitution that was passed by the people in 2020. We got it in 2017, and we brought it again in 2019. It passed, and so then the people voted on it in 2020, and it is the most expansive equal rights amendment in the country. And that's not my saying. That's other people saying. So there were a couple of inaccuracies that were made there. So I would just encourage whoever said that to go to that, because I believe we've done it. The executive and the legislative branches come together and put the budget in, and sometimes it's very contentious. Maybe some people might want to come around the last 2 weeks of session, because that's when we have to get right down to the nitty-gritty. And some bills are that we think or we feel that are important. Some of those bills get vetoed. And I see that my colleague, Senator Dondero Loop, has a question. So.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and I appreciate you allowing me to have some questions here. Ms. Nelson, thank you for your overview and your critique of how we operate. And I appreciate you bringing up the I Can Bike program, because I followed that, and Diana Rovetti did a wonderful job with that. So can you tell me how your department is actually funded? Is it funded through federal government, or is it funded through the state? How is it actually funded?
Absolutely. So Catherine Nielsen, for the record, thank you very much for the question. We are 75% federally funded through the Developmental Disabilities and Bill of Rights Act, Administration on Community Living's DD Council programs, and then 25% of our funds come from state general funds.
Great. So if your funding comes through the federal government and you do grants, et cetera, can you fund the blind program that was brought up earlier by NIB?
It really depends on how, Catherine Nielsen, for the record. It would really depend on how that was written and what that was written about. Our budget is quite small in comparison to others, but we do have some flexibility as far as like what we can pay for. Is it reducing access to, or is it reducing barriers to accessing information? So in a sense, yes, those are things that we can pay for.
Great. Well, I would encourage you to look at funding that for us. Since you're asking us to fund things, I would suggest that you look at that first. Also, how big is your department? Like, how many people are in your department? Is it just you? Is it 5 people? Is it 25 people?
So we're located within the director's office of the Department of Health and Human Services. Our actual staff for the council, we have 6 staff members, 5 paid, and then 1 internship through vocational rehab.
Okay, all right. So, So if you have those people and you're writing grants, I'm assuming that you can also help with some of the disability acts that you're saying that we need to cover. So I would suggest, for example, that possibly you could help find some of our interpreters that we may need. That certainly, for example, with me, I would not have that expertise, unfortunately. I would love to have it, but I don't have it, and your department does have it. So perhaps you can, certainly instead of criticizing, reach out and say, gee, I know you're going to have a finance meeting. Do you have an interpreter? And then I maybe say, no, I don't. Do you have one available? Because those are, we have no staff. I mean, I don't have a secretary, excepting when I'm at the building, which is every other year in the odd years. So, I'm sure that we could use all the help we can get, and I'm sure that we're working as fast as we can in the state of Nevada. But due to the fact that you have some federal funding, I'm hoping that maybe you can help out with that. Because I heard a whole lot of criticisms and not a lot of solutions.
Catherine Nielsen, for the record, 2 things here. Absolutely, we can help you with interpreters or any questions you may have regarding that. We have a CAS team here within Aging and Disability Services as well. They're, in simpler terms, kind of our gurus when it comes to interpretation, and so they also can assist with that. But we would be happy to help that. Now, on the other half of it, as much as they may seem like criticisms, they're not our voices. This is the community that has brought these concerns to us, and so we're really just the people that, unfortunately, have to sometimes deliver that bad news, and sometimes have to say, this is what your community is saying, and that we are allies and that we are working alongside of the various different state service providing agencies to make sure that we are addressing as many as we can. Unfortunately, what was asked of me today was to report on our 5-year state plan, and that's how we build our 5-year state plan, is identifying any of those barriers in the community and how we can address them. And so I don't know if maybe you're able to clarify on anything that may have been construed as criticism, but that's certainly not what the community wants you to hear. They have concerns, and it's not criticism. It's passion. It's their families.
Probably the last 20 minutes. So I would just say that if you come with solutions, it helps. So I get the criticism that you want to air, but the solutions are helpful because you seem to be the expert and not me. So I'm just asking you for solutions, and I'll reach out to Mr. Whitley as well. But the fact that your department is funded 75% federal, I'm not sure who, that's why I'm trying to figure out like who oversees you that I could reach out to and say, hey, can you assist, blah, blah, blah. So I don't know who that person is.
This is Catherine for the record. I would be happy to help connect you with the CAST team. There are team interpreters or state interpreters as well. That is Jen Montoya over at Aging and Disability Services. She kind of oversees all of the interpreter piece. But like you said, accessibility can be totally different for every different person. And so we would be happy to help give you any of those resources that you may need. We were just trying to complement the fact that the interpreters were provided the whole day, and that was very beneficial to those with disabilities. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I hope you'll look into funding the blind program that was requested, and I'll reach out to a couple people. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Ms. Nielsen, for the presentation. I just have one clarifying question. I thought I heard you said that you attempted to file a complaint against the state of Nevada with the Department of Justice federally. And I'm curious to know, did I actually hear that? And then did you attempt to reach out to the Protection and Advocacy Organization locally for assistance?
This is Catherine for the record. So first things first, I am the president of the board.
Can you give us your last name? Give us your last name.
Oh, sorry, Catherine Nielsen for the record. I apologize. I'm the president of the board for the Nevada Disability Advocacy and Law Center, so we've had thorough conversations with them. This was last year. We had reached out to them because we had tried to rectify things with the Department of Education. There were some serious concerns coming out of Washoe County School District and the current status of those who are deaf and hard of hearing in the state of Nevada. Unfortunately, Department of Ed does have their hands tied in some aspects of it. And so our only option was to go and reach out to the U.S. Department of Justice because they are the next step. We are federally identified through the Developmental Disabilities and Bill of Rights Act to identify the most pressing needs of those with IDD in the state of Nevada. And unfortunately, sometimes it doesn't agree with state agencies, and that's the autonomy that was built into this federal act, is that we are able to listen to the voices and bring them forward or bring them with us in the cases where they're willing to do so. So yes, you did hear that correctly. And yes, we did speak with the Department of Education. We did speak with the Protection and Advocacy System here in the state of Nevada, but they are going through some significant changes, employment changes. So unfortunately, our only option was to reach out for support federally.
Thank you for that clarification. So now I understand that you're the president of the Protection and Advocacy Organizations Board while serving as the executive director for the DD Council. Is there, isn't the original act intended to have three separate divisions, the the DD Council, the Protection and Advocacy Organization, and the University Center for Excellence in Disabilities that are all created by the same Developmental Disabilities Act. Is it not intended for there to be separation there? I don't understand how you're leading both boards simultaneously.
So this is Catherine for the record. I only lead the systemic part.
Last name.
Sorry. I'm so sorry. Catherine Nielsen for the record. I am only the executive director of the council, so I'm not the chair of our council. Therefore, no, I definitely don't lead our council in that aspect of it. But the same aspect of that, I am the president of the board of directors for the Disability Advocacy and Law Center. And we did reach out to the Administration on Community Living to make sure that there was no concerns with that. And there wasn't.
Additional questions, comments? Anyone up north? Okay. Thank you, Ms. Nielsen, for your presentation. And again, I would just say the Equal Rights Amendment in Nevada covers all of those areas that you said were discriminatory or offensive, because it does include disabilities. And it does include race, gender, creed, religion, all of those things. And it's been termed to be the most expansive in the country. So perhaps your organization can look at that and see how you might be able to use that as a way to leverage the money that you get from the federal government. So that's all I have. Thanks a lot, okay?
Thank you.
And now we will move to item number 11. Item number 11. Item 9. Sorry about that. We've jumped around the agenda so much, I'm almost lost. I need a map. Item number 9, presentation on accessibility in the legislature for adults with disabilities. Lance.
Hello, thank you, Madam Chairman.
Okay, thank you.
Chair, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen.
Madam Chair, this is Assemblyman Gray.
Yes.
Yeah, can we please ask the presenter to speak up a little bit?
Okay, yeah.
Speak up a little.
Lance, can you increase your volume? Okay.
Yes, I can do that.
Okay. And you're going to share your screen?
Yes,
I think we've let BPS know, so there it is. Okay.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Before I begin, I just want to let everyone know I was appointed to the Deaf Commission at the end of February, and I have not been able to have a meeting with the Deaf Commission to kind of go over some of the items, recommendations that you have requested in the email, and I kind of don't feel comfortable giving recommendations from the HLAA until I at least speak with the Deaf Commission on our meeting next month on the 8th. But I will give a few recommendations that the HLAA had prior to my being appointed to the Deaf Commission. For the record, my name is Lance Leday. I am the president of the HLAA Southern Nevada chapter. Joining me, Deanna Gay. She is the vice president. Deanna joined on with me a little over a year ago, and 2018 I started this chapter. It is part of the national chapter. A little bit about HLAA. The mission of HLAA is to open the world of communication to people with hearing loss by providing information, education, support, and advocacy. And while we're on this topic, I love the presentation Eric gave earlier when he mentioned cultural competency. And one of your replies were, what can the legislation do? Just to give you a quick example, something that has been going on since about 2 years now. I'm also the chairman of the Assistive Technology Council here in Nevada. The last legislative session, several individuals complained of not having closed caption during the legislative session. And that seemed to be a big issue during that. And so what we do, we have a support group every other month, and we provide information, education, support, and advocacy as often as we can. Our primary purpose is to educate ourselves, our families, friends, coworkers. We keep up on the latest in assistive technology. We provide as much as technology and medical advances to all individuals with hearing loss. We are primarily oral, so the chapter is set up, the support group, should I say, is more set up to help individuals with hearing loss. Some chapters across the nation have only about 5 to 7% do support ASL, but they are very large. Right now, the HLAA is trying to build themselves back up. The COVID pandemic really hurt us. We're down to 178 chapters nationwide. Before COVID, we had over nearly 460 chapters, I believe. So we're doing a lot of outreaches, and we're trying to get the HLAA back up to where it was prior to COVID. Anyway, another problem, the original presentation I sent, I have to apologize. There were modifications made that I did not notice, that I'm not sure how they were made, but I can understand if there was an issue. I do want to talk about, right now, when you're talking about cultural competency, right now, Deanna and I we're both wear bilateral hearing aids. Neither one of us requested CART in this meeting. Just to give you a small example, why closed captions are so critical. Right now at the bottom of your Zoom screen, you can see the more sign. You may have to move your mouse. And in most cases, anyone who holds a Zoom meeting or a Teams meeting, they will have the closed caption radio button engaged just for an individual who may have hearing loss, who may not really need CART, or if I would have requested CART, you would probably have to pay a couple $100 or more to have CART present to do captions. Whereas if you had just had the radio button turned on, I could have clicked closed caption and turned the closed caption on without any problem, without anyone even knowing. And I think that is something that's very important. And I think that all councils and commissions, if they don't have CART going on, if no one has requested CART, I think it would be a great idea to always have the closed caption activated. And the closed caption I'm talking about is the free closed caption that comes with Zoom or Teams, and you just turn it on. That's all you do, but you have to do it prior to the meeting starting. I'm going a little bit more, I'm not going to keep everyone, I know you're tired. Support and advocacy, we support everyone who emails us and requests anything. We go out of our way to help everyone. We have an annual convention each year. This year it's in Phoenix. I will be attending. These meetings are a great wealth of resources about assistive technology. I can't stress enough, anyone who wants to learn more about hearing loss, they should definitely attend these meetings each year, the convention. Membership, they changed since COVID. Membership, you can pay as little as $5 to become a member. If you want to be a true member, it's $45 a year. You get the Hearing Loss magazine seasonally. That's something that you get just becoming a member. You can see there's not many chapters left since COVID. We're the only one in Nevada, but we're trying to get up to at least 3. And we do hold our virtual meetings bi-monthly, the same day, the second Thursday each month on Thursday. Key activities. Walk for Hearing is the largest event of its kind for people with hearing loss. It's held in cities across the country. I have been trying to get it here in Las Vegas for a while, but they're wanting to build us up a little bit larger before we are able to do it. Hopefully we're wanting to do it in 2025 to 2026. Hearingloss.org is our main website. Getting in the Hearing Loop, that talks about hearing loops that you can use in government buildings, which is something I would like to talk with the Deaf Commission about next month. Hearing Help, this just talks about basic hearing symptoms. This is all of the links work on this website. If anyone would like a copy of it, I'd be more than happy to just share it with you. If you think you have hearing loss, this is, Eric went over all of the symptoms about hearing loss in his presentation. Basically, they pretty much did a lot of the things I was going to say. I left all of the links here in technology. The one thing I did want to mention here, when it comes to assistive technology, I'm not sure if it's possible with the upcoming legislation. I know that recently, if you have Medicaid and you have hearing loss, you can get a pair of hearing aids. I would strongly urge to the legislation to please consider the possibility of allowing an individual with hearing loss to have a choice between either purchasing a pair of hearing aids or purchasing a pair of the new closed caption glasses. They're called Xander glasses. There are no wires. It's literally just a pair of glasses you put on, you charge it overnight, and when you're looking at talk, you actually are reading the captions going across the screen in the glasses. Many of the people that I've helped who've emailed me, and I just help if they're looking to purchase hearing aids or looking for a better way to hear due to the type of hearing loss that they have. A lot of them are beginning to opt to get the glasses rather than getting the hearing aids. The main reason is the glasses are not affected by humidity as much as the hearing aids are. My hearing aids, I wear, too. I have to replace them every 4 years, regardless of what state I'm in. But these glasses are very expensive, but they seem to last at least 10 years or more. I have some videos in here. I'm not going to play them here. Like I said, I know everyone's tired, but they're great videos. And I know Eric went over the hearing aids earlier, the different type. And there are cochlear implants, and Eric has already gone over the types of hearing aids, the inner ear implantable, osseointegrated devices. They're just surgically embedded in the outside of the person's skull. It's just a type of cochlear implant that has a processor which kind of helps someone know which way the sound is coming from. Anyone needing more information, feel free to contact Deanna Gay or myself. I'm going to stop sharing here. And there's a few more things I'd like to mention. I strongly think that closed captions, like I said earlier, should be on at all times, even if card is or is not being provided. Some people can get by using the closed caption, just like now. I know Deanna and I were texting that if we would have had closed caption here, I think Deanna used up the 603 minutes she had on Otter, and I used up Ava 3 minutes for the month. We were just kind of chatting about it. All it is simply turning it on. The closed caption glasses, this technology was just released last year. I actually had a chance to try that in 2021 when it was a prototype, and it is truly amazing. And they've even have some additional features with some additional companies making it. And if Medicaid could have a way to give someone a chance or the options to go either way, it would really benefit a lot of people, especially those with sensorineural hearing loss. Other than that, the only other thing that I really want to bring up until I meet with the Deaf Commission next month is last year's the 2023 legislative session. We had several people that were members of the AT Council who they didn't have hearing loss, but they needed closed caption due to their disability, and they were really struggled. And they wrote many letters to several people in the legislature trying to get something passed. I'm not sure if that's something you can do for everyone or for every single video. That's just feedback that you had asked for that I feel comfortable sharing at this time. Any questions? That's kind of where I'm going to end for now.
Thank you, Vice Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Ledet. Very happy that you are here. So sorry it took us so long to get to you this afternoon, but appreciate your patience. You and I have had an opportunity to work pretty closely together with regard to some of your recommendations. We have here, I'm going to borrow the senator's device that I'm sure you can see on video, is the current adaptive technology that is available to us as legislators, and I understand the general public, which is that amplified hearing device I shared with you some time ago. Do you have a recommendation for a different type of device that you are thinking will help us become more accessible for people who are hard of hearing?
Now, does the device you're holding in your hand, that works with a hearing aid or without a hearing aid?
This device, Mr. Ledet, works without a hearing aid. It goes, actually, Senator, do you wear a hearing aid and this device? No. No, without.
Yeah, just making sure, because I saw the device you sent me, and one picture that I saw, it said it was a T-coil, and that kind of confused me because that needs a hearing aid. But what you just showed me is similar to what they call a pocket talker. Depending on the DB, they do make a pocket talker 2.0 that I have tried out. It works very well. It's probably the loudest out of all of them, and it's completely adjustable. That device works without hearing aids as well as with hearing aids. Now, when it comes to someone who has hearing aids who wants to hear in a government building better, whether they have Bluetooth or T-coil, that's a whole nother story. You need a completely different device depending on the hearing aid or cochlear implant type. But the Pocket Talker 2.0 would be a good device. It's much better than the one you just showed me because it has two speakers, one on each ear.
Thank you for that. So I'm curious to know, we did a little bit of research. We do have some adaptive technology that is available in the legislative buildings in particular. Is it that we don't, as a general public, know that we have adaptive technology available? Maybe a sign at the front desk? Would that help us to direct people? Do you think that could be a viable solution as we continue to explore technology?
That's a great question, and I'm going to give you more than one answer to that. Number one, a lot of audiologists forget to educate their clients on what comes with their hearing aid and what their choices are. And when I say that, their choices are either they get a T-coil or Bluetooth or both. I decided to get both of them. Now, when it comes to educating them, if they don't educate them and tell them what the T-coil does and actually show them, which 90% of the audiologists in the state don't even have a way to demonstrate a T-coil at their office, believe it or not. Having a sign would be very helpful, and you would also probably want to have a little, another brochure next to it, maybe in plexiglass, saying, if you wear your hearing aids or cochlear implants, simply engage your T-coil. And you may still have someone ask, well, what's a T-coil? Because they were not not explained by their audiologist that actually works in their hearing aids. due to the fact that the audiologist does not have a way to demonstrate it when they sell the hearing aids. That is a really big problem here in Nevada. The audiologists, they do not demonstrate the external devices that you can use with your hearing aids. You have many different types of neck loops for Bluetooth, for T-coils. You have different devices such as the little pin speakers. You have the conference table, transmitters and receivers, but they don't tell the individual any of this. And those extra devices, you know, even though they cost $200 or $300, they make so much of a difference in helping someone hear. And it's really a shame that the audiologists don't go deeper into what can connect to the hearing aids that they sell.
Thank you. Additional questions? Any questions, Carson City?
What's that?
Any questions?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Any in Carson City? I don't see any. Okay. So you know, one of the things in the adaptive device that the vice chair held up was something that I used to use. One of the things that occurred to me, and I was told by someone who tries to follow us online about 3 years ago, maybe 4 now, that when the people, you know, came to the table, and some of us on the dais didn't speak loud enough, and it was very difficult for them to hear. So I always try to announce that at the beginning of the meeting so that people are aware that there are folks who are listening to us online. If they're listening to us online, they don't have the adaptive device. And if people don't speak clearly and into the mic, then that might be an issue, a problem. So just a comment, that's all. Okay. Thank you so much, sir.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Okay. All right. And so now we will go to, I think we're on item 12. Item 12. Discussion solicitation for recommendations, and we're going to extend that deadline to August 1st, 2024. And what I'd like to do is we heard some pretty good recommendations or pertinent recommendations, especially dealing with dementia and dealing with our senior population. So I would just ask the committee members to consider those as a way to move forward in terms of making sure that we are ready for the inversion of the population when it gets here. We might also want to look at, because there will be an increase, I think it's going to 20% increase in adults over 65, might also look at what some of the peripheral needs might be. For example, if someone's 65 and they have a son or a daughter who is 40 or 30, 35, they may be in that sandwich generation. So they may have responsibility for their child and then have now assumed responsibility for their parents. So not quite sure what that would look like, but let's look at how some of those peripheral elements might influence what we do. Okay. Comments? Committee members? Don't see any. So let's go to item number 13, public comment. Anybody in Carson City? And just remember that public comment is limited to 2 minutes, and we don't comment at all on what you say. We just listen. Don't see anybody here in Las Vegas. Broadcast, anybody on the phones?
Thank you, Chair. If you'd like to participate in public comment, please press star 9 on your phone to take your place in the queue.
Good evening, Chair and members of the committee. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Good evening. This is Dora Martinez again. Thank you so much for all your patience and your beautiful smiles there today. It was very honored to come there and present on AB 252. We do hope that you guys will, consider our ask. And I want to thank all of you, and especially many gratitude to Senator Krasner. I wish I'd known that you were there. I would have come and gave you a hug. And that's what happens when you're blind. You kind of miss things. And so just know that I really appreciate you and all that you do. And I want to thank the amazing Catherine Nielsen for being there and putting a face of disabled community and population of Nevada moving forward because of her expertise and her knowledge and patience and understanding. We are in a good hand and we're moving forward together. Her office is office of 6 staff who are Wonder Women. They do everything, and if they don't know the answer, they'll find it. And so we appreciate everything that she does, and her awesome staff who are very accommodating and have accessible agenda, which I hope LCB will follow. Thank you so much, and make it a great night. Drive safe.
Thank you. BPS, anyone else on the phones?
Yes, Chair, please stand by.
Hi. Hello. Hello. Hello.
Hello, we can hear you.
Okay. Oh, hi. Hi. Good afternoon. Thank you, Senator Spearman and other members of the committee. My name is DJ Kokelia, and I'm here as an advocate for my 87-year-old father. He's a veteran and disabled with Alzheimer's. So you might have heard Alzheimer's Association as of 2023 reports that 49,000 people suffer from Alzheimer's disease in the state of Nevada. And, the elderly and the disabled, they need our protection also financially because they are targets. So I'll just share 2 brief true stories recently. So in March 2023, I contacted one of our HOAs, Taylor Association Management, for a detailed account of all the fees associated with the HOA. And I mentioned to them that my father has Alzheimer's, and I was telling everyone who would listen. And, he was current on his dues, but on January the 31st, we were surprisingly informed that a $9,900 penalty we received for not painting his house, which was shocking. He never received any notice, and after painting the house within 2 weeks, and sending the photographs to the HOA, he received a letter demanding the $9,900 fee was due and payable immediately upon receipt of the letter. And there was no, they refused to waive or reduce the fines or discuss the payment plans. And in another situation, a different HOA, my father was calling, sending letters and checks, and and trying to communicate with the HOA. He wanted clarification because there was a fee, and he thought he already paid it. But they never responded to him, which led him to believe that his financial obligations had been met. So, all this, it just leads up to, and, the elderly can, I've seen many times, they can be targets, $3,600 for removing pigeons, or $20,000 HVACs that someone wants, my father to sign in 20 minutes, So they are targets. And many times the family members are not living in the state. And so many people, they may not even have family members around. So I think that they need protection, especially financial protection. And so I would like to actually maybe draft a bill to amend NRS 116 governing the HOAs because they're separate private companies. And they need to be able to be mandated to respond to homeowner questions, especially with financial matters, because we are in a non-judicial lien state. And the HOA management companies, who are many times owned by the investment companies and the collection companies, they operate in those non-judicial lien states because you could just pop a note in the mail. And for people that are cognitively impaired, like my dad, they just, and my dad was paying the mortgage even 9 months after the transfer, so their brains are not, they just really need protection, and especially with the HOAs. So they need to be able to be mandated to respond to the homeowners in a timely fashion, especially with financial matters. Thank you so much.
Thank you. BPS, anyone else on the lines?
Yes, Chair. Caller with the last three digits 419, you are unmuted and may begin.
Hello, Chair Spearman and members of the committee. My name is Benjamin Chalnor, Director of Public Policy for the Alzheimer's Association. I would like to thank our colleague that we work really closely with, Dr. Peter Reed, for presenting his recommendations on behalf of the Sanford Center. One of those being the Nevada Memory Net that we submitted for recommendation to the committee. It's good to see that our fellow stakeholders are presenting this as a recommendation as well to the committee, and shows the need that we need to make sure that we are able to proceed with the Nevada Memory Net so we could address the needs of Nevadans who are living with Alzheimer's and their families and caregivers. I submitted the recommendation to committee staff earlier this month, and I'm looking forward to working with the committee moving forward to make sure we are able to get this introduced next legislative session as well as passed and implemented. Thank you.
If you've recently joined the call and would like to participate in public comment, please press star 9 on your phone to take your place in the queue. Chair, the public line is open and working. However, there are no more callers at this time.
Okay, thank you very much. And I'd like to thank committee members as well as those who stuck it out with us. This was a rather long meeting, but I think we were able to gather some pretty good information. And with that, we will close. Our next meeting will be August 20th. And with that, we are adjourned.